Hi, my name is Helena and I am a physician assistant PA student. I was born in Harbin, China and moved to America when I was 6. I've lived all over the East Coast, but currently I'm attending school at Emory University in Atlanta while my family resides in Chicago. But let's start from the beginning, shall we? I was born to two loving parents as an only child in China. Both of them were doctors and researchers who moved to the US for further studies and, free from the one-child policy, decided to have my baby brother. He's 10 years younger than me. Even though I grew up in a family of doctors going all the way back to my grandparents' generation, I inherited my dad's love for art and wanted to be an artist. I started drawing and doodling as soon as I was able to hold a pencil and drew pictures before I learned how to write. My dad, who also wanted to become an artist before poverty and life forced him to choose a more stable career as a doctor, encouraged my passion. Perhaps he saw a bit of himself in me. Under my parents' support, as well as my art teachers, I entered a national scholastic art exhibit competition in 5th grade and won first place at the state level, advancing to the national level at the tender age of 10. However, as all things go, my dream of becoming an artist was slowly blunted by the notion of responsibilities, student loans, and financial stability. Little by little, I began to follow in my dad's footsteps, though in the opposite direction of art. I directed my attention towards medicine instead. By the time I started applying to colleges, I was set on becoming a medical provider. Nonetheless, I still enjoyed art as a hobby on the side and decided to volunteer with the art therapy department at a local hospital to try to combine my two interests. In college, I took both science and art classes for the ultimate balance. In October, during my freshman year of college, I received an urgent call from my mom while I was in my art history class. I remember my phone was on silent, so I didn't hear her voicemail until after class. But when I played the message, she told me to hurry home back to Chicago as soon as possible. There was something ominous in her tone. I packed my bags and started my 13-hour drive back to Chicago that afternoon. Some unexplained subconscious thought in the back of my mind nagged me to pack some black clothes for the possibility of a funeral, but I resisted against the notion and packed only colorful clothing instead. To entertain the notion meant that someone had passed away, and that was a thought I couldn't bear at only 19 years old. So I drove back in a pink hoodie with a rainbow design on the front, although that did nothing to assuage my fears. October in Chicago meant cold, gray, dreary weather, broken up only by the silhouette of dead tree branches. My pink rainbow sweatshirt must have been the only pop of color as I stood outside the cul-de-sac where my house stood. When my mom opened the door, she was wearing a green puffer jacket, a testament to the freezing cold that permeated into the house. She uttered a single sentence: "Your father is dead." The details from that specific moment are burned into my mind even now, 7 years later. I distinctly remember the exact outfit my mom wore, the words my then 10-year-old brother said to comfort my mom, and the layout of the house as I walked numbly into the living room, looking for any signs of my dad in the hopes that I had misheard my mom. And then, in a fit of grief and realization, my mom and I collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. The next few days were a blur, and I don't remember much from the funeral except for the thought that I should have packed black after all. There were people who came from all over the world, from China to Florida, California to Georgia. I must have written and given the eulogy and made a slideshow of my dad's pictures on autopilot. Everything seemed so surreal, but the tears that refused to stop flowing said otherwise. We cried ourselves to sleep every night, hoping to wake up to the entire situation being a dream. But the harsh reality was there to greet us each morning, and we soon learned one of life's most bitter lessons. The world will continue to spin as if nothing happened, drowning out your screams of pain and agony. My dad died in his sleep from a sudden heart attack. He was supposed to go to the cardiologist the next morning, despite seeing his physician a week earlier. Tragically, his doctor didn't detect the emergency on his previous visit. Although my parents were doctors in China, my dad's English wasn't good enough to become licensed in America, and my mom decided to pursue research instead. When I was in middle school, my dad quit his job to pursue an acupuncture degree, hoping to combine Western and Eastern medicine for diseases that couldn't be treated by drugs and surgery alone. My mom accepted a higher paying position in Chicago, but we couldn't sell the house in Florida when the housing bubble collapsed, and my parents were forced to pay 2 mortgages. Soon, they depleted all their savings and had to reach out for emergency loans. It was during this time when my dad's chronic stress must have multiplied. I learned after his passing that he once stood for 5 minutes trying to justify buying a loaf of fancy bread for $1.99 instead of the usual 99 cents. Finally, he put it back on the shelf. I was ignorant the entire time of my parents' difficulties, and my dad continued to sacrifice himself in order to scrap together the $5 needed for my art project materials. Even in their most desperate times, my parents tried to protect me and let me live a normal life. My dad's life insurance helped to offset some of the living costs for a bit, and by the time it was used up, my mom was able to get higher promotions and our lives started to improve little by little, if only on the surface. When you lose a loved one like this so suddenly, you never truly recover from the emotional wounds, although time is the best ointment. My dad's passing affected me tremendously. My grades dipped and I ended up failing my organic chemistry class. What was the point in studying and working hard all your life only to die from the stress? I thought about my dad a lot and how unfair life was for him, having worked hard his entire life without being able to enjoy anything before having his life stuffed out in his 40s. I fought with my mom over not wanting to go to medical school and my failing grades, and she was heartbroken and advised me to not let my dad's death be in vain so that I could live a better life. I thought long and hard about what life I wanted for myself and how I can live a life that my dad would be proud of. I thought about transferring to an art school and pursuing art instead, like my childhood dream, but the thought of having financial difficulties again frightened me away, as that was the main cause of my dad's stressors and ultimately his demise. My last semester of senior year in college, I took a random class to fit into my schedule. It was an introduction to global health with an emphasis on the social determinants of health. It changed my life. Perhaps it was because I saw the social determinants of health as an eye-opening idea and something that explained why my apparently healthy-appearing dad would die so suddenly. Conditions in the environments in which people are born, live, learn, work, play, and age affect a wide range of health. Or maybe I fell in love with the idea that health is not just the absence of disease, but a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. Something so simple yet so profound. I found a hero in Paul Farmer from the book we had to read, a doctor and anthropologist and founder of Partners in Health who advocates for decreasing mortality and morbidity by improving the conditions around individuals in addition to treating their diseases. Conditions such as road work, transportation, being overworked, removing or improving stigma, physical and social safety, mental health, access to treatment. These were things I never actively thought about that could affect health, but makes complete sense once they were presented to me. My interest in medicine returned and burned more than ever, but this time, instead of solely focusing on medicine and the individual, my desire was to include population health and how these macro structures could affect someone's health. By the time I graduated, I enrolled in a CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant program to get my license so I can work in a hospital. I worked at the Autism Center from 8 to 4, grabbed a sandwich on my drive to the CNA class, and was in class from 5 to 10 p.m. I was up from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. and continued like this for months. Once I received my degree, I got a job working as a CNA on the cardiovascular medical surgery floor at Henry Hospital, working 13-hour night shifts. It was difficult physical labor, but I wanted to help my patients. By now, I was aiming for PA school, hoping to make a difference in primary care, to work with patients and preventive health. I wanted to catch their diseases before it worsened to prevent another family from losing their loved ones from something that should have been caught much earlier. Additionally, I wanted to counsel patients on how parts of their life can be contributing to their health and what we can do to alleviate that. 2 years later, I was accepted to Emory's PA-MPH program, pursuing my passions in both medicine and public health. I have completed all my public health coursework and field experience, and am now in my first year of PA school. It has been everything I have dreamed about and more. And surprisingly, I didn't give up my pursuit of art. Despite the apparent juxtaposition between art and science, art is a bridge that unites the artist and his audience. This human connection is the core of medicine, which is why we call it the art of healing. I hope to use both my degrees to better provide for my patients and to understand how their diseases may have deeper causes beyond the surface pathophysiology. I want to partner with local communities to make sustainable changes within all that will benefit those who live there. I want to be a physician assistant and public health practitioner who will advocate for not only my own patients' health, but the health of entire populations who may be at risk, and to bridge the health inequities some of my fellow neighbors are suffering from. I have lots of dreams and hopes for my future and degrees, but for now, I'm going to focus on my final next week.